Shalom, I am Dr. Ann Davis, and we're going to have fun today. There's a wonderful way to learn about the Philistines and how they affected the history of Israel, which is what we're going to do today. We all know the story of David and Goliath, but did you know that Goliath was a Philistine? Who were the Philistines, and why were they bitter enemies of the people of Israel? We will travel to several sites in Israel to answer these questions. So we're going to have fun today going to learn about Philistines. Now, who were the Philistines? Well, archaeologists, by seeing similarities of artifacts, have suggest that they came originally from Crete, which is an island south of Greece. And apparently there was an influx of people coming from the north of Greece in, and they pushed these people out. The people were sea people. The island of Crete, of course, is in the Mediterranean Sea, so they were sea people. And so some of them went across to what is today Turkey, and we can see them settling in areas in what is today Turkey. And they were Greek. They became Greek cities, and some of them took to ships and went down the coast, and they went all the way to Egypt. And in Egypt there was a battle, and it was a sea battle between the Philistines and the Egyptians. The Egyptians won the battle, and here is a picture from Israel of a painting of that sea battle. And the Philistines were turned back, and they went back and settled on the coast of what is today Israel. So that's who the Philistines are. Now, let's take a look here at geography. We see the Sea of Galilee in the north, and the Jordan River flowing down into the Dead Sea. And of course, you see the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the people of Israel were hugging up into the hill country because this is the period of the Judges before the United Kingdom under David and Solomon. And let's see, something I want you to really know is the hill country comes to an escarpment, which is a steep, almost like a cliff, that drops down into the flat Jezreel Valley. So here is a picture that I've taken. I'm standing in the Jezreel Valley, and I'm looking at where the escarpment rises up into the hill country as it goes to the south of Israel. Now there's something else, and that's to show you where the trade route ran. The trade route came from Babylonia, Mesopotamia, and it went through the flat Jezreel Valley. It cut through that escarpment at Megiddo. There's a pass at Megiddo, and if you've been to Israel, I'm sure you've gone through. You know, you're on the hill in the coastal plain, and then you go up into that where the hill country meets the Mediterranean Sea. But then there's a pass there where you can drop down into the Jezreel Valley. Megiddo is right where you drop down into the flat Jezreel Valley. Where are the Philistines? Settled on the coast of what is today Israel, and the trade route came right through the Philistine land, which made them very wealthy because they collected tolls of everyone who was coming down on the trade route to Egypt. Now, they were also controlled by the Egyptians. They gave tribute to the Egyptians. And we see some influence of Egypt among the Philistines. And the other thing I want you to recognize is that the flats go right to the edge of that escarpment that goes up into the hill country. So they've abutted right to the hill country where the people of Israel are. Now, the people of Israel, this is not a united monarchy yet. They're living in their tribal areas of the 12 tribes of Israel up in the hill country. Now, the Philistines had 5 city-states. They were not a united country. They had 5 city-states. Each had a walled city, but they controlled the land around the walled city, which is why it's called a city-state. They control the land around the walled city. Each of the 5 city-states had a lord. that was in charge. So there were 5 Philistine lords. And these city-states of the Philistines were Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gaza, Gat, and Ekron. Now we are going to visit 2 of them. We're going to go to Ekron and we're going to go to Gat. And I'll show you in a minute what's going to happen there. So we're traveling now. We're going to start in Jerusalem. We're going to go down to Tel Beit Shemesh, which was an Israelite wall city right on the edge where it's going to drop down into the flats where the Philistines are in control. So we're going to go from Jerusalem to Tel Beit Shemesh, and then from Tel Beit Shemesh we're going to go over to the site of Ekron, and then we're going to go a little bit farther north of that to the archaeological site of Gat. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, when I was there, I was with a wonderful guide, Gary Alley, who is an American citizen, married a lovely woman whose family lives in Israel. Her father is a translator. He translates between Hebrew and English. And Gary's and I were going on this trip, and you're going to come with us. We start in Jerusalem, and we're going down through the hill country to Tel Beit Shemesh. So now, Tel Beit Shemesh today has a modern city, which we stayed away from, and we went over to the Tel site, and that's an archaeological site of the original ancient Israelite city that was a walled city. Now, the other thing I want you to realize is the Sorek Valley, which flows down into the Mediterranean. Tel Beit Shemesh is just on the edge of the hill country, and then it drops down into the flats where the Philistines are in control. So let me show you a little bit more about this. Tel Beit Shemesh is just on the edge of the hill country. Zorah and Eshtaol are part of the story of Samson and Delilah. You read that in the Bible. Samson came from Zorah, and Eshtaol is also mentioned in the Bible. Now, Timnah is where Delilah came from. Delilah was a Philistine, and that's the story of Samson and Delilah. And Ekron is where we're going to go, which was one of the walls, city-states of the Philistines. Now, one thing I want you to, okay, there's where we're going. We're going to Ekron. I want you to realize that on one side of the Sorek Valley are the people of Israel in the hill country. On the other side are the Philistines down in the flats. Okay, so, and Beit Shemesh is right there where it's a flashpoint right there in Beit Shemesh. There's a flashpoint between the people of Israel in the hill country and the Philistines down on the coastal plain. Okay, we're headed now for Ekron. And as we approach Ekron, it's Tel Mikneh in Hebrew. It's a Tel site, and these Tel sites are mounds. They're mounds because the city was originally built on some kind of an elevated area, but then historically it would have been destroyed, rebuilt, and so that it becomes higher and higher, and it's called a Tel. It's called a Tel, and the archaeologists, you can identify these Tels. Some of the Tels have not been excavated. And the big Tels have been excavated, and this is one that has been excavated. Now, the people who worked on of course, the archaeologists are in charge, but the people who were the workers came from Kibbutz Revadim, which is just not too far from the Tel site, and is down. I'm standing at the Kibbutz. I'm standing at the Kibbutz and looking out at the Tel site. So the people who were living in the Kibbutz were the workers there when it was excavated. The excavation is over. It's not being excavated now. But the people in Kibbutz Revadim took some of the artifacts and they built what they call the Philistine Street, which features production and ritual installations discovered at the Ekron excavation. So they did the work of excavating, and so they've taken some of the artifacts. And the wooden and ceramic objects have been replicated to show how these installations function. All components made of stone are original. So they took these things from the Tel site and they created this Philistine street where you can walk down and you really get it's a wonderful way to learn about the Philistines. So here we are now on the Philistine street. And this is a typical home reconstruction, which I find very interesting because it's very small. And you see the shelf there? That's very characteristic. There's another a site that has been reconstructed that I've visited. And you see these shelves in the houses because there's not enough room down on the flat area to do much. So the storage is in these shelves. And they didn't cook in the house. They cooked in ovens outside. And this is a reconstruction of an oven. And it was a communal oven. Each household did not have its own oven. There would have been one that would have served several households. Then, as we walk down the street, we see the pottery, and the pottery is in pieces, but it's been this is not a reconstruction. The pottery has been put together so that you can see the original pot. Now, in some cases, the archaeologists recover a pot in whole, but in some cases, and many cases, it's been broken and they piece it together. What's interesting about this pottery is that the designs are very similar to the designs that we see in Crete. So that's part of the evidence that archaeologists have suggested that the Philistines were from this the sea people coming from Crete. Now, there's something else interesting, and this is, you see these little tiny little stones. They're loom weights, and they're found in every archaeological site in Israel, because the women were the weavers, did the weaving, and the weights, you see the weights on the bottom of the strings of the loom, that they hold the strings tight. And so these loom weights are found in all the archaeological sites. And that's reconstructed loom to show you how the weaving was done. Now I want to take a look at the religion of the Philistines. And what we have here are two altars. The one at the top would have been a household altar. So every house had worshipped a god of that house. And they're polytheistic, so we're going to have a whole lot of gods here. And the bottom one was a communal altar for communal worship. And we read in the Bible, now this is an account at a later time with the divided kingdom of Israel in the north, Judah in the south, but it talks about the god Baal Zavuv, and I want to mention that. So Ahaziah was a king of the northern kingdom of Israel, fell through the lattice in his upper chamber, which was in Samaria, that's the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, and became ill. So he sent messengers and said to them, "Go inquire of Baal Zavuv, the god of Ekron, whether I will recover from this sickness." So this I find interesting. So now Baal was the god, and he comes in different forms. And this Zavuv is flies. So this particular version of Baal protected them against the flies that cause plagues. And this is just interesting. Now, we go to the New Testament, and the priests accused Yeshua, and listen to this. Yeshua, hey, wait a minute, you're casting out demons by the same God, Baal Zavuv, the ruler of the demons. So even in the time of Yeshua, the people were still tending towards occasionally worshiping some of these pagan gods. And he was this god of Ekron. Okay, now we see here an excavation of a cemetery in Ashkelon. What was discovered were these clay coffins with remains of the dead in these clay coffins. And at first, the archaeologists thought that all the people were in these clay coffins, which is characteristic by the way of Egyptian influence. And but then, as they excavated in the cemeteries, they found that most of the people were not buried in these clay coffins. The clay coffins were reserved for the lords and the high aristocracy of the Philistines. Something else interesting about the Philistines is their manufacture of iron. And we read, "No blacksmith could be found in all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, otherwise the Hebrews will make swords and spears." So the Philistines controlled iron. and they allowed the Israelites to come down. So all Israel went down to the Philistines, each to sharpen the plowshare, because that's not a weapon, mattock, axe, and hoe. These are tools, not weapons. So we have excavated from the Philistines their iron weapons. The Israelites did not have iron weapons, which made the Philistines very, very powerful. So now the sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, served Baals, that's the plural Baals because Baal comes in different versions, and the gods of the Philistines. Thus they forsook the Lord and did not serve him. I want to show you here, okay, it continues. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines, and we know the Philistines, and into the hands of the sons of Ammon. So what we have here, you see that the Ammonites are over on the west side of the Jordan River, and we know where the Philistines are. Now, this is during the period of the Judges. So we read in the Bible that the Ammonites they didn't come in. There was no battle. The Israelites are in these tribal areas and little villages, and they don't have the power to fight against the Ammonites. So the Ammonites would just come in, and they'd come into a village, they'd rape the women and steal whatever they wanted to steal, and then they'd go back to their own land on the other side of the Jordan River. And you can see why, there was this ongoing struggle between the people of Israel and the Philistines. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the other Tel site, which is Tel Tzafit, ancient site of Gat. And this is where Goliath came from Gat. We're actually going to walk up onto the Tel site here. Israel has made it a national site where you can go, and here Gary and I are walking up onto the top of the hillside, and Israel has given a plaque showing what the Philistine warriors looked like with that typical headdress, and they had the iron weapons, of course. And as we walked up on the Tel site, Israel has put plaques to tell the whole story of the Philistines, and especially the battle between the Philistines and the Israelites. So here's one of the plaques. And Samuel's word went forth to all Israel. Israel marched out to engage the Philistines in battle. They encamped near Eben-Ezer. Now that's the edge of the hill country where they can look down onto the flats, while the Philistines camped at Phek. Phek is on the trade route, all right, and I'll show you because we went to Phek. Okay, the Philistines arrayed themselves against Israel, and when the battle was fought, now the battle's going to be fought down here on the flats, so the Israelites are going to come down from the edge of the hill country down onto the flats to fight the battle. The Philistines arrayed themselves against Israel, and when the battle was fought, Israel was routed by the Philistines, who slew about 4,000 men on the field of battle. Now keep 4,000 in your mind. But first, Gary took me over to Phek, which is now a state park by the state of Israel, and there's water there. And there's picnic areas for the people, and you can see why Phek, which was a stopping point on the trade route, and why it was a stopping point, because there was water. Now, the people of Israel are up in Eben-Ezer, which is just on the edge where the hill country drops down into the coastal plain. And so there, I'm showing you there because we went there, and you could see how they're hugging up there. And there was excavation done there and it turned out to be a village later than this period of the battle. But I want to point out to you that Eben is stone, and Etzer is the verb to help. So the stone of help. So apparently what was there at the time that the Israelites were there ready to fight the battle against the Philistines were standing stones. Now the standing stones are no longer there, but there are standing stones in Gezer, in the archaeological site of Gezer. And they were on high places, and it was pagan worship. And they're huge monolithic stones. And I've got an arrow pointing to a person down below, walking down below, to show you how huge these stones are. So Eben-Ezer apparently had these standing stones, which was pagan, But we read that the Philistines drew up in battle array to meet Israel. When the battle spread, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about these 4,000. We've got 4,000 men killed in the battle. The Israelites are not going to give up. They're going to engage in a battle a second time. But before that, what they did is the people sent to Shiloh. Now, Shiloh is up here in the hill country. This is where the Ark of the Covenant is held during the period of the Judges. It's held up in Shiloh. So they go back to Shiloh and they say, we want the Ark of the Covenant, and we're going to bring it to Eben-Ezer, because if we have the Ark of the Covenant in Eben-Ezer, we're going to win the next battle. So the people sent to Shiloh, and from there they carry the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of Hosts, who sits above the cherubim. So you see the Ark of the Covenant going from Shiloh to Eben-Ezer, and it stays in Eben-Ezer while they go down on the flats to fight the second battle. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated a second time, and every man fled to his tent. So they've given up. That's it. Whoever survived, they went back to their little tribal area up in the hill country. And the slaughter was very great, for there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. The first battle was 4,000. Now we've got 30. This was a huge defeat. This is a painting in a synagogue in Eastern Europe that shows the Ark of the Covenant and everything that's been destroyed, and the Philistines that have this terrible, terrible defeat of Israel. And the Ark of God was taken by the Philistines. Now the Philistines took the Ark of God and brought it to Ashdod, to the house of Dagon, and set it by Dagon. Now, house would have been temple, the temple. So they went up to Eben-Ezer, they took the Ark of the Covenant, and they brought it to one of the Philistine cities, to Ashdod. And the archaeologists have discovered temples, or the remains of temples, of Dagon in both Ashdod and Gaza. Dagon was, the Philistines were polytheistic, so they had a whole lot of gods, but Dagon was their main god. And we have a picture here of Dagon. He apparently was from the sea. When the people of Ashdod arose early the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen. Now, Dagon would have been a statue, a large statue that they worshipped. And the statue had fallen on his face to the ground before the Ark of the Lord's. And so they're thinking, oh, the God of Israel is doing something here. So what we see is we see the Ark of the Covenant going from Shiloh to Eben-Ezer, and then the Israelites take it from Eben-Ezer and bring it to Ashdod. And then what happens is the hand of the Lord was heavy on the Ashdodites, and he ravaged them and smote them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territory. So that's the city-state, not only the people in the walled city, but in the farming areas outside that was part of the city-state of Ashdod. And so the people said, oh, let the ark, the God of Israel, be brought around to Gat. We don't want it in Ashdod anymore. So they sent it to Gat. Then the same thing happened in Gat. And the people of God said, we don't want it. Send it to Ekron. The hand of the Lord was against Gat with very great confusion. And he smote the men of the city, both young and old, so that the tumors broke out on them also. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. So there's the journey. It's starting in Shiloh, and there's the journey of the ark. It ends up in Ekron. And when it came to Ekron, the people said, no way. We are not going to have it here, because we are not going to have the same plague. No way. It's going to be returned to the people of Israel. So they put the ark of the Lord on the cart. The cows took they said, okay, wherever the cows go, that's where the God of Israel wants them to go. And the carts went to Beit Shemesh, which is the Israelite walled city of Beit Shemesh. They went along the highway, lowing as they went, and did not turn aside to the right or the left. They went in a straight line to Beit Shemesh. And the 5 lords of the Philistines followed them to the border of Beit Shemesh, because that's where the oxen were going, and they figured, that's where, the God of Israel wants them to go. And this is in 1 Samuel 6:11-12. So that's the end of my story about the Philistines. But when you think of Goliath, remember he was a Philistine and he came from the city-state of Gath. And you also now will know about the struggle between the people of Israel hugging up into the hill country during the period of the Judges and the powerful Philistines with iron weapons down in the in the flat of the hill country. I have been to Israel so many times, and every time I go, I want to travel to some site in Israel. And when I go into the Palestinian area, I have a wonderful elderly gentleman he's a Palestinian, but he's a Lutheran, and he lives in East Jerusalem, but his office is in West Jerusalem, and he organizes tours, and I really depend on him. I trust him whenever I go into the Palestinian area, because he arranges. First of all, he knows what's safe and what's not safe. I've always wanted to go to that deep valley that goes from Jerusalem down into Jordan, and he would tell me when I was in Israel, nope, you can't go. It's not safe because the Palestinians are up on the rim and they're taking pot shots down on people. I won't let you go. But finally, on one of my trips, he said, it is safe now to go. So whenever I go into the Palestinian area, he arranges for these 2 young men from East Jerusalem who are Palestinians, but they've been licensed by the state of Israel as tour guides, and they rent a car in East Jerusalem, so it doesn't have the Israeli plates. It has the plates of East Jerusalem, the Palestinian plates. And I feel very comfortable going in Palestine with these 2 young men. We've gone into the homes of Palestinians. Of course, they speak Arabic, and we've gone into archaeological sites that are in the heart of the Palestinian area. So I'm going to do some more of these travels, and I'm going to take you into the Palestinian area where I've gone with these wonderful guides, and we'll just have more fun traveling into Israel, into many of these archaeological sites and areas where we get the stories from the Bible. With that, I wish you shalom.